Yeah, we start. So do you hear us really good?
Perfect. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. How is your mood after yesterday's game?
I will suffer for many weeks for this.
Dismissed from Iose.
The FA Cup final all of a sudden is vanished from the memory now. Now we don't make Champions League, so never mind.
Okay, so Mike, tell us a little bit about your journey to be the tennis analyst, the data analyst, because we know that you were earlier tennis coach. So what was your journey to be a tennis analyst?
Yeah, basically in 2015, I was traveling on the professional tour and I never played professional tennis. So for me, it was how do I get my message across with professional players when I've not been there and done that? So technology for me was really, really important. I've always been into technology. I'm a sucker for buying the latest iPhone and MacBook and these things. So it was natural that I progressed into videoing the players, reviewing it in the hotel rooms. There's a lot of downtime on the tour, particularly on a match day. On a match day, if the player plays at 10 a.m. after recovery, there's the rest of the day to review and talk about the match. So I started doing that with players that I was working with at futures level, challenger level, starting to push into sort of Grand Slam qualifying. But then I suppose my career changed when I met Magnus Norman at the 2018 US Open and had a coffee with him. We got on really well. And then a month later, he sent me an email titled Stan Wawrinka. So he wanted me to compare Stan before his knee injury and after his knee injury because he had a lot of surgery on the knees around 2017. So I took this opportunity with both hands, had a go, and then sort of the journey has been, I'm full-time now in analysis, working with many players, federations, academies, and if I'm honest, I really enjoy this role. I think it's an amazing role, but also it's a very new role within tennis. Tennis is actually behind many other sports with stats and numbers and using this.
And why do you think is that? Because tennis is really popular, especially I think maybe in US, and we have in US, for example, MLB, NFL. They have attacking coaches, defense coaches, and in tennis, I know only two guys with the analytics. Craig O'Shaughnessy and you right now.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I mean, if I'm honest, the game stats only came into tennis in 1991. So if you talk about NFL, NBA, baseball, they've been collecting data since the 60s. So first of all, we were behind to begin with, but then there's many ex-professional players that are now coaches from the 80s, 90s, and a lot of the beliefs are around, you need to feel this, see this, react, and you cannot really put together a game plan and work out the opponent when actually that's not true. And this is the challenge I have, is educating everybody out there to understand that you can actually see patterns within any tennis match, whatever level, subconscious or conscious, because why is there patterns? People say to me, you cannot scout Nick Kyrgios, okay, because he doesn't know what he's doing. But the thing is, he does, because subconsciously, he will do things that he likes more often than things that he doesn't like. So therefore, there's a pattern there. So yes.
So how many matches you should see to see these patterns? So how many?
Brilliant question. I think if you're talking about a very, a lower level with a recreational player, or you're talking about a player that's a junior, probably 6 matches, you're starting to get some information. It's the same as watching a series on Netflix. If I watch the first episode of The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, I know a little bit about the Chicago Bulls. I know he was a good player, but I don't know episode 3 with Dennis Rodman and everything that goes on. So you need the full Netflix series to understand about the player. So 6 matches is a minimum. But obviously, when I'm working with pro players, I have the privilege of having, with Igor or Stan or these players, 40, 50 matches a season. So then we can really dive deep into their numbers and their game plan.
And supporters often saw basic stats after
every set, but I think that you need much more data. And what is the most important data for you?
Great question. And the thing with data in tennis also, it's very fragmented because you have ATP showing data, WTA showing data, the Grand Slams showing data. Even the Grand Slams do not have the same data companies working for them. So you watch an ATP match and you get quite a lot of information now around rally zones, Hawkeye graphics, these sort of things. You go to WTA and they show you 5 basic stats that you could have seen 20 years ago in the 90s. So, for me, it's like, what are the most important stats? We know that 0 to 4 is the most dominant rally zone, okay? And it's also the winning zone. If I play you, okay, and I win the 0 to 4 zone 54%, okay, I beat you 9 times out of 10. So we know that zone is very, very important. So therefore, we need to look at the serve, the return, +1, on the serve ball and the return ball. So these, when you get into this, that's vital information, okay? Then also you have many other things. You have things like the ball speed. It's very, very important. Tennis is a power sport. Often the most powerful tennis players are very good, or the most accurate tennis players are very good. So if you're Diego Schwartzman, power is not going to be your main strength, okay? It's going to be accuracy. If you're John Isner, it's going to be the opposite.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your cooperation with Iga. We've seen it at Soto Grande Academy when you was with the whole team. But when we asked Piotr about you, he said that you started the cooperation earlier, so it wasn't a new one. So when did you when Piotr contact with you for the first time?
Yes, so this was a really interesting situation. So after the French Open, he contacted me, first of all, so I can take no credit for what happened there, those amazing 2 weeks. He contacted me first week of November, and the goal there was he had a very, very long off-season with Iga, because after the French, they finished. So he wanted me to review her game for the year and basically provide him with information for the practice court for this off-season. So this was the first goal. Fortunately, we got on very, very well. He's one of the most forward-thinking coaches I've ever worked with, and one of the youngest. And I've worked with some of the great coaches out there, Magnus Norman, Claudio Pistolesi, Miro Havatan. I've worked with some very, very good coaches, and Piotr is right up there for me with his intelligence, his willingness to learn, to bring new ideas. He's a very, what I call a modern-day tennis coach of how you need to be. So we got on very well. He liked what I did. Presented it back to Igor and the team, and then basically they hired me for this season, and it's been a great season so far.
And Igor often says that Piotr prepared her from the tactical point of view before the game, and did Piotr talk with you before he talked with Igor during the tournament?
So do you do the scouting?
This is a great question. So I actually don't do the scouting for them. Okay, so he's a big believer at the moment that it's all about Igor's side of the net. So if Iga can produce her best tennis with a great game plan, then more often than not, she can come up with the win. And actually, this is a trend that's happening now. So Iga is 19, turning 20 next month. So she's still very, very young. So she's not fully developed her game style, and she will not be at her peak for another 2 or 3 years. So this is what I call game development. We're actually looking at her side of the net and try to improve on every single game situation for her. However, we have talked about looking at scouting potentially in the future. Why? Because if you look at the golden generation of men's tennis in the last 15 years, Roger, Rafa, Novak, Andy, they've actually affected each other's careers, which is unusual in tennis. And why do I say that? Because Rafa and Novak played again in the final on Sunday. They played over 50 times, and it's often in semi-finals or finals. So it actually matters that you're scouting that player and looking at that player, because that player is going to be the difference between you getting the title and not getting the title. Now, in the women's tennis, that's not been the case, because you've had one slam wonders for the last 10 years, with Serena Williams still picking up a lot of Grand Slams. What I think is going to happen now in women's tennis is there's going to be a golden generation in female tennis in the next 10 or 15 years. For me, there's 15 players that can be top 5. So whoever is in the top 5 is going to be very, very good, and we're going to see a new peak in women's tennis.
So what is the difference between your work on site, for example, in Soto Grande Academy, and at home? Because you analyze the matches at home at your office.
Absolutely. I'm currently on vacation as well at the moment, so it's non-stop for me. I mean, if I'm honest, there's no difference. For me, being on site is building the relationship. I can have many more conversations with Piotr and the team, and ultimately you can get into a deeper conversation in person. Of course, we're in the Zoom culture at the moment. You've had the pandemic. It's amazing that we have video calling at this level nowadays. However, it's always better being on site and building that personal relationship. So it's more down to this reason, really.
And you mentioned the relationship with Piotr. How could you describe the whole team of Iga? Could you compare to the other team, because you probably know many people in tour?
Absolutely. Well, what I would say, it's an amazing team. The vibe, the atmosphere, the connection with the team, I think, is amazing. I also think it's an all Polish team. It's an all Polish team, apart from myself potentially, and that's quite interesting, because often players, when they go in further on in the tour, they find different nationalities, and sometimes they lose that connection. And I actually think it's very special what the team has at the moment, which is the fact it's all Polish. So I think that's a really exciting, because everyone's on the same journey together. So I think it's one of the best teams I've been around. Maciek, an amazing physical trainer, Daria, amazing sports psychologist, and Piotr, amazing coach, and obviously an amazing player in Iga.
So, and it's quite unusual in WTA, because there is a lot of coaches switches in WTA, and she had the big team like in ATP, I think. And I've seen one of your podcasts that you said that tennis will be like F1, like the photo with Hamilton, and that this is developing area in tennis.
Absolutely, because 20 years ago the player would hold the trophy, and I've got to thank my coach today. Now they take the trophy, and I have to thank my team. And it's getting bigger and bigger, but it's getting bigger and bigger for a reason, because sport is moving on, technology, sports science is moving onwards. We all know that Iga's been the trendsetter, the team's been a trendsetter with having a sports psychologist. What happens? Svitolina hires a sports psychologist. Other players are looking at sports psychologists now. So also there's trends, isn't there? Someone has to do something first. It's like my role did not exist even 10 years ago. So, and this is becoming, you would be surprised, as much as you said there, Herbert, that myself and Craig, there are many more analysts out there. It's just that you don't know about them.
Okay.
And because you said that you have been working with Iga since November or October, and did you see some changes in her game during this time, her developing her game? And
yeah.
What is it?
Very fast, actually, but also we have to remember that it's the conversations. It's me and Piotr always having those conversations almost daily. We're reviewing, the way we work together is perfect. We review after every tournament. We actually just did the Rome review last night. The changes, I can't go into real specifics because this is confidential. It's very, very important. But I would say nearly all of her numbers are ahead of last year. So actually, what I was reviewing last night, many things are better than she did at the French Open, which is exciting. Not everything. Some things there still needs to be, for a tennis player is always doing this, up and down, up and down. They never reach the perfect situation. They're always, one area goes this, and one area maybe goes down a little bit. Now, my job is to find out which is the best area to be working on to be able to win. So important.
And what about the percentage of first serve? We've seen at Rome that it was, I didn't know the number, but I bet it was about 55, I think, first serves in. So it's higher than last year or a bit lower?
So the first serve percentage in the last few weeks has been lower. However, the winning percentage generally is higher this year. Okay. But the second serve was fantastic. The second serve was her saving shot for me from a numbers point of view last week. It was world class. The flight path, the top spin she's producing, where she gets the player in defense off her second serve. Most female players just put the ball in on the second serve and start the point. Iga is actually attacking from the second serve, which is really, really exciting. She reminds me of almost like Sam Stosur when she won the US Open. She had an unbelievable kick serve. And Iga does have this in her locker room, in her toolkit, which is exciting.
And you are a big football fan, so probably you know the stats, expected goals or expected goals conceded. But I didn't hear expected games in tennis or expected points. But is there any data that you could predict that some players are underachieving or overachieving?
Absolutely. So if I'm honest with you, what I'll do with Piotr and other players, I will show, like, say, for example, Iga's numbers, and I will say to him, her numbers now are in the top 5, top 10, top 30, etc. So I've been working with some players where their ranking is 30, but their data is showing me that it's probably more around 70. So what that means is if they carry on, they're actually going to go down. So absolutely right, Maciek. So basically, you know, the data is giving me a view into the future a little bit. Of course, it's not perfect. It's not, you know, this is the situation, it's going to happen. The player has to do many, many things. But you can predict with certain information where the player is going to go. So, for example, I'll be honest with you, anyone can check this out, public information. Iga is 9 in the world on serve stats this year and 9 in the world on return. Okay, her actual WTA ranking is 14. So she's slightly ahead of the ranking. In other things, she's more ahead as well. So it's very exciting.
So what about the Rome tournament? Do you do any statistic, any comparisons about the big points? Because my intuition said that Iga won most of the big points at this tournament. So it was crucial part.
Yeah, the biggest two were 15-40 match point down against Trevikova. I mean, that was you know, unbelievable there. I mean, ultimately, absolutely right. We do in the background our own big point index, but ultimately you have to decide what is a big point, because is the big point from 30 all? Is it, you know, some players would go, well, every point is a big point. I need to play every point as well as possible, hence the final. You know, she broke records for least points lost in a final, I think, for many, many years. And I think it's the record at actually a 1,000 level. So absolutely right. So we internally, I'm very tailor-made with my analysis. So when I'm working with Magnus Norman or whether working with Piotr, we decide different KPIs for that player. You know, so what are we judging success? Because ultimately the fans judge success with the trophies and the ranking, right? Okay, I'm judging success behind the scenes a little bit differently. Of course, that is the ultimate goal, but you know, I'm tracking information and also tracking other players, other rivals of Iga, to see, well, what are they doing? What are they doing better? You know, what are they doing a little bit, you know, that's outside the box?
Yeah, and so from the statistical point of view, what is the difference between, you know, top 20 player and maybe the guy who is 55? So what's the difference?
Well, the scary thing is the world number 1 player wins 56% of their points for the year. So only just over half. They're losing, you know, many, many points. When you get to top 50, you're actually losing more points than you're winning, which is hard for everybody to get their head around, right? You're 50 in the world and you're losing more points than you're winning. So actually, when you're talking about top 20, top 10, top 5, I describe it as like, it's like being at base camp on Mount Everest. Okay, you can see the flag and it's 1%, 1%, 1%, you know, and it really is very small differences, you know. So, you know, the conversation I had with Piotr last night, you're talking, you know, we're talking about 200 points here for the season, 300 points here in different situations that is going to make a difference in, you know, the ranking going up.
And you are working with Iga, but in the past you mentioned, for example, Stan Wawrinka. And what is the main difference when you analyze WTA tour matches and ATP tour matches?
I mean, if I'm honest, it's very, very similar in many ways. The main difference is the serve. Okay, so men are not getting broke anywhere near as much as the females. So often in a men's set, one break is enough. And then you can even go, one break isn't enough because you have to go to the tie break. The female game, it's way more up and down, up and down. You can see huge comebacks because the nature of the serve is not so strong. So for me, there's more opportunities for the female players to actually break serve. Why? They're returning around 10% more balls in play than the men's side. So really the serve is the most dominating shot in the sport on both sides, but the men are holding serve much, much more.
So Iga asked Piotr after one of the matches in Rome, which situation is easier to win? So when you are leading 5-1 and you have a serve, or if you are leading 5-1 in a tiebreak and you have the serve. So from the statistical point of view, which situation is easier? Because I think that 5-1 and the serve is easier, but in my amateur career, I lost that set. And I never lost when I was 5-1 in tiebreak.
I mean, if I'm honest, there's not enough data on that to really back up those situations. He actually sent me the message when he was talking with Igor about this, and he said, "Mike, can you shed some light and help me out on this?" But ultimately, if 5-1 in the tiebreak, you're 2 points away from winning the set. 5-1 in games, you're many points away from winning. Getting back from that situation. So. This is something, ask me in 12 months and I'll do a study on this. So I cannot give you the full answer, but I like the question. And I like Igor's mentality. I like the fact that Igor is challenging and thinking of these different situations all the time, because like we said earlier, tennis is not there yet with all of this information. It's fascinating.
Is there any situation in your career when you look at the stats of some players that maybe is outside top 100 and we didn't know about him or her, and that maybe in the near future he or she will be in the, for example, top 50 or even higher?
Great question. So I'm working on the men's side with several players who are born 99. So I'm working with 2 players who are inside the top 100, born 99, and 2 players in the challenge and futures level, born 99. Okay. So looking at that comparison, what you can see is, the players born 99 in 4 and 500 are not doing the same numbers and producing the same stats as the top 100 players. So what I mean by that's in your question, if you see somebody producing really high level statistics, that often links to winning. Therefore, they'll cut through the level very, very quickly. If you look at Sinner, Musetti, Aliassime, these guys, they do not hang around the futures and the challenges. They get through the level really, really quickly. So the answer is, if I see someone with very, very good numbers, they're winning. So there's no correlation between, wow, they look at their serve numbers or their aces and they're stuck in the challenges. They're there for a reason.
Yeah. And how do you see the future of the tennis? Because like we said earlier, we didn't have stats like in US sports. So how do you see the future?
I think for tennis, wearable technology is going to come into play. So the players with the heart monitors at the next gen finals in Milan, the players actually could have the heart monitors. So you could, the physical trainers could measure their fatigue levels, their heart rates. Imagine Wimbledon final 2019, Federer, Djokovic 2 much points down, or Federer 2 much points down, and seeing the heart rate. Imagine seeing the heart rate on the screen. How calm is he in that situation? So, for me, you're going to see wearable technology. So way more data around the heat maps and the player movement will come into play for fans. But also, I think the shorter format of the game will come into play a little bit more. So the Fast 4 Next Gen, I actually think is a great product for the next generation. Let's be honest, we're all wanting to watch a tennis match highlights on YouTube for 7 or 8 minutes. We're not going to replay the match very often, the next generation of kids. So I think Fast 4 potentially could be a tour, and I think wearable technology is going to come into play.
And what do you think about coaching in play? I mean, between the games.
Well, you can imagine I'm going to say it's absolutely brilliant. There's the purists out there that don't want coaching, that want the player to work it out for themselves. I say tennis coaches are the only coaches in all of sport that cannot coach when the player is playing the game. If you're a football manager, you're paid for the 90 minutes on the touchline to be totally engrossed in the game, basketball, etc. Golf caddy can discuss with the golfer about which shot to take. In tennis, no, good luck, you're on your own. So I think the on-court coaching is fantastic. And of course, like at Next Gen, you have the coaches with the headsets, you have the player with the iPad, the coach with the iPad. So I think we can upgrade all of this area in tennis and make it more exciting for fans, because that's what we need.
In football or in volleyball, there's a people who is in the stands and is connect with maybe second trainer or assistant. And do you expect that in the near future maybe coaches in tennis will have other people in the stands that give him information live during the match?
Brilliant. So at Next Gen, I was working with Misha Kekmanovic in 2019 and 2020, and I was gutted that the Next Gen finals got cancelled in 2020, because I was actually going to be there with the iPad, feeding the information to the head coach, and we were going to be working together through the match. Casper Ruud has an analyst, and actually his analyst was there in 2019 and was doing exactly that. He was sitting next to Christian Ruud, looking at the iPad. So Christian Ruud was totally involved in the match. The analyst was looking at the data and feeding the information like you just said. So 100% I can see that in our sport.
Yeah, so it's quite unusual when we right now have only coaching in WTA was allowed during the breaks, and in ATP there was no coaching. So it was a big change. I mean, and someone has to adjust to this, especially WTA players.
Absolutely. And I think honestly it will feed all the way down. I think in 10 years time you'll go to a junior ITF event and the coach will be able to coach with the iPad, because smart court technology is becoming more and more normal. So I think eventually this is going to be normal, and I think it's going to be more exciting and make tennis more modern for the next generation of fans.
Okay, that's everything from us. I think.
It's everything, Mark. So thank you for your time. So nice to meet you, and maybe after pandemic we will meet at some tournaments or some.
Well, to come to the WTA 250 in July. Yes, to Poland. Yes, the new WTA 250 that's happening in July.
Yeah, perfect. So we will be on site.
That's so exciting. And guys, where can I find this interview? Where can I look at this and share this? Or how's it going to be? Is it going to be on YouTube, written? How does it work?
Our website.
So written, but maybe some parts with Iga, it will be on TV or maybe on Facebook. So I will.
You can send me when it's out.
I will keep you posted.
Perfecto. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and look forward to seeing you in July for a beer.
Yeah, perfect.
Finger crossed for Aston Villa.
We're not making Champions League, so there's no hope, but thank you for that. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye.